San Diego isn't the only place implementing police reform policies. Similar reform efforts are happening across the nation. Joining me now to talk more about the policy reforms and supporting law enforcement is the National Vice President of the Fraternal Order of Police, Mr. Joe Gamaldi. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, let's start with a lot of these items that I just read off. It seems to me like they've been in the police handbook for a long time. Is there any new content being added?
Well, I think a lot of these reforms had already been done in most of our major cities across the country. But let's be clear, we're not scared of increased training. Nationalized de-escalation training, nationalized use of force training, banning of chokeholds. Even though a lot of these things were already done, we're not scared of more training, but we also need to make sure that there's money in the budgets for training like this. Because while everyone wants to increase training for police officers, nobody wants to talk about how much that's going to cost. And instead, they're, floating these crazy theories of we should defund or dismantle the police. And I'm just wanting to ask these folks, what does that actually look like? And I don't want to hear, well, we'll send out social workers. No. In real practice, if somebody's getting robbed at gunpoint tomorrow, who is coming to help that individual? And nobody seems to be able to answer that question.
Some poll about that very issue, and only 27% of the population actually support defunding the police. In fact, folks in the communities where some of these issues are rising, they want to have a bigger police presence. You say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're out in the community and you're speaking to hardworking people, law-abiding citizens, business owners, they're going to tell you that they want more police in their neighborhoods, not less. But I think the irony of it all is you have the mayor of Seattle who allowed an entire city blocks to be taken over, and now they want those city blocks taken back. Who are they sending in? The very police officers that they want to defund and dismantle. So now they're going to call these officers in to clean up the mess. And then they're going to have those officers on camera while these terrorists and looters attack them. And then they're going to hold the officers responsible if they have to use force. It's completely ridiculous, and it needs to stop.
One of the issues is that I'm looking at the politicians, our national politicians debate, is the issue of qualified immunity. Could you explain what that is about and why removing qualified immunity might affect the caliber of police officer you hire?
Well, let's go ahead and just debunk some of the false narratives about qualified immunity. There is a general acceptance from the media, and what they're selling to everyone is that an officer always receives qualified immunity. And in fact, in the last 200 cases that were handled in lower courts, they only received qualified immunity 57% of the time. And it does not cover egregious cases. Like the idiot in Minneapolis, Officer Chauvin, he's not going to be covered by qualified immunity. But basically what qualified immunity does is that if an officer is within policy, training, and the law, they're not subject to civil prosecution. And let me tell you something. If you're a young person right now who's interested in a life in service and you're looking at becoming a police officer, if qualified immunity doesn't exist and you know that you're going to get sued every single time you make an arrest, are you really going to take that job? Law enforcement applications were down 63% last year. I can only imagine what those numbers are going to look like. So people really need to look at the unintended consequences before they pitch ideas like doing away with qualified immunity altogether.
So your theme, as you speak to me, is not that we want fewer officers, we want better officers. Am I hearing you correctly?
I think that's what every single community wants. They want quality policing. They want officers that care about their community. And let me tell you, our officers do. They love the communities that they work in. And especially our younger officers who have never been trained, never been better trained, never been better educated. They are racially diverse. Right here in Houston, we are a majority minority department. And they're out on these front lines, on these skirmish lines, getting screamed at with all sorts of racial epithets, the most horrible things you could ever see said to someone. But they're holding the line. They're showing up to work the next day, and they're going to protect the communities that we love.
Joe, I think we're going to have to table this conversation to our next get-together. Thank you very much for making time for KUSI TV this morning.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Joe Gamaldi, the National Vice President of the Fraternal Order of Police, joining us from, I believe, Houston. All right.